Anyway, if you think that fireworks will be booming in Washington in about 3 hours, you should have been there earlier this morning as the House Oversight Committee got off to just a very snarky start. And as you might know, if you're up on things, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee is San Diego's own Congressman Darrell, who joins us now live here on KFMB. Good afternoon, Congressman.
Well, good afternoon. And for those who had nothing else to do and watch C-SPAN, it was a good political entertainment. But at the end of the day, we passed a very fair package to actually create more opportunities for the minority to be represented than in past Congresses.
And, you know, I think you kind of gave us a heads up a while ago on this whole thing. You know, we recall just a little while ago, it seems, when you had these thoughts in your head.
It's going to be acrimonious. There's no question. He has been one of the most corrupt presidents in modern times.
You have since said you regret saying that, but after calling him one of the most...
I corrected what I meant to say, you know, on live radio with Rush going back and forth. And by the way, that was because Rush had me on to answer the question about coming together, having compromise. He didn't like the compromise word when I said we're going to agree to disagree, and then we're going to find the kind of common ground, the kind of compromise that makes and gets things done. In saying that this is one of the most corrupt administrations, which is what I meant to say there, when you hand out $1 trillion in TARP just before this president came in, most of it unspent, $1 trillion nearly in stimulus that this president asked for, plus this huge expansion in health care and government, it has a corrupting effect.
Well, Darrell Issa, there it is. You know, you say it, you back it up, and now you try and put your words into action. But there's some roadblocks ahead. But and between you and Elijah Cummings today, he wanted to kind of be your, I guess, good cop to your bad cop. Will that work out with that relationship?
Well, you know, today they wanted to have rules that they had never accepted when the shoe was on the other foot. They wanted to limit any kind of discovery, have full hearings every time you wanted the administration to produce a document. Obviously, if we're going to get to the bottom of a wasteful bureaucracy, not a bad president, a wasteful bureaucracy, if we're going to roll back initiatives that are done without the vote of Congress every day in regulations compounded and propounded on the American people, we're going to need to do it, and we're going to need to do it aggressively, and I intend to. The fact is that many of the people on his side of the aisle are with us on this, and I intend on bringing as many along as I can to go after waste, fraud, and abuse in government that the American people elected me and a majority of Republicans in the House to do.
And you know, Darrell, Issa, we were cheering you because you hit the ground running. You have already identified ways that we can cut money. We just see today the government recaptured $4 billion in health care fraud, and I'm probably afraid to say that that's probably not even the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, it's a good 5% or so per annum.
But it's good, and you know, you can make a lot of interest on that money today in the bank, so that's pretty good. Now you have to get that compounded interest.
No, you absolutely have to get to the $40 billion, not $4 billion. One of the biggest problems in curbing the cost of health care is getting fraud out of it. The truth is that a service rendered to somebody is an invisible event. I always say it's a little bit like if you rotate a tire for somebody, and you don't put the bill in the drawer at a gas station, it's awful hard for someone to know that you just ripped them off. Well, healthcare has a great deal of that, where claims are made for services never done. The patient doesn't necessarily know. It's a third-party payer. Well, there's great fraud units when you have private sector, Kaiser, Blue Cross, and so on. They look at this constantly. But Medicare and Medicaid are proud of having almost no fraud prevention, meaning they basically just write checks. That's got to change if we're going to rein in excesses in government.
Now, the funny thing is that everybody else knows about this. I mean, you know, you can talk to anybody and they know about frauds. They know people who are ripping off the government, ripping off the taxpayers as well. I mean, it just is amazing how the balloon can get so big. Now, sincerely, this is what you're trying to do, is finally put an end to this, because it creeps up. It's billions of dollars we're talking about on the governmental level, and I hope you succeed in that. Now, tonight, the speech. What side of the aisle are you going to be sitting on tonight? I think we should have to ask all our congresspeople now.
Well, you can never be sure because we don't have assigned seating, but I will be sitting with my immediately past chairman, Ed Towns of Brooklyn. He is a prominent member of the Congressional Black Caucus, almost 3-decade member, and somebody who I call friend, because even though we didn't always agree, when we could agree, we did things together, and we did some good oversight in the last Congress that I'm hoping to build on in this Congress.
Now, you know, Darrell Issa, this isn't the first oversight committee that we have had. Where did others fail, and how will you succeed and make it different?
Well, I think some of it has to do with a hearing, if you will, a gotcha hearing. Always gets the press happy, and everybody walks away saying, boy, they sure made a difference. And the next day, 1,000 other bureaucrats are doing the same or more. What we have to do is institutionalize changes. What I often talk about, and Chairman Towns, when he was in charge, worked with me very closely on, is we have to change the whole pattern to what are the institutional, how do we get data transparency, for example, and I'll just give it to you briefly. I don't want to get very technical, although many of your listeners could very much understand this. If the public could see in real time what the government is spending money on, the government would, the American people, the taxpayers, would become our best eyes and ears. That's what we're trying to achieve. We want every database in government, without giving up unreasonably, private information. We want them to be transparent to the public, because we think the public will be better watchdogs than a few agencies tasked at trying to find.
Oh, was there a conspiracy there to cut Congressman Issa off? Darn it.
I hope not.
Oh, here we are. We're back with you. We got you.
Okay, no problem.
Just continue.
I was brilliant while you were off, but I'll pick up where I left off. But it really is important that we institutionalize the American people being our eyes and ears as part of the process, and that requires that we make the data. Every one of your listeners undoubtedly has at some point Googled a name and then looked for images, and up comes this incredible amount of information from databases disparate around the world. That's great. Look at how seldom actual databases from the government come up. What comes up once in a while is a website where they posted a picture or a name. What we need is we need you to be able to look at spending or a contract or anything that you want to and quickly see where the money was spent. The truth is you should be able to get this information. It's your tax dollars. We need to make it available. That's part of what we're going to institutionalize over the next 2 years in government.
Well, that's great, and that's very encouraging. And, you know, as far as a scoreboard or something like that, we used to have the deficit scoreboard up there in the trillions of dollars that people could watch, but I don't think people really grabbed it. And I hope you'll bring it down to a little easier level, and I think you're trying to do that to explain to people that this thing needs to be reined in, the bureaucracy, but it can be done if people work together and actually listen to other people instead of arguing about it the whole time.
You're absolutely right, but everyone knows that if you want to get out of the hole, the first thing you do is stop digging. What we're going to do is we're going to move this government in the non-defense, non-entitlement side to for the first time ever, to an amount of spending that is less in this year, this fiscal year, than it was in the last. In other words, we're actually going to reduce these categories back by 2 full years. Now, that's not a change that's going to balance the budget overnight, but it's the first time in which government is actually going on a diet and spending less in real dollars than it did before. Then we're going to begin taking on much harder, much more requiring education issues like Social Security and Medicare, particularly Medicare and Medicaid reform, because these are now consuming more dollars and projected to consume far more dollars than anything else in government, and matter of fact, than anything else in government.
And one more question for you, Congressman Issa. Will the president's speech in 3 hours make your job easier or tougher, or you have to stay the course anyway, regardless of what he says?
We're another branch. We have to do what we think is right. The fact that the president has made a bit of a change, an epiphany, if you will, and begun talking about regulatory excesses, began talking about reining in government, is a good start. But as he might tonight drift into the word investment, which is another name for spending, and it's spending.
Gosh, is he on AT&T? Here, okay. We kind of lost you right there, but we've gone into overtime, and I know you want to get a good seat, so we're going to let you go. Thank you for your time. Checks and balances is what Congressman Darrell Issa is saying, and somebody's got to stop writing the checks and balance the budget.